A desperate encounter. The warning klaxons aboard the research vessel Helios had been blaring for hours, their harsh sound now merely background noise to the crew's desperate efforts. Captain Soren Nazari gripped the edge of the command console, his knuckles white with tension. The ship's primary systems had been critically damaged during their passage through an unexpected asteroid field in the outer reaches of the Altair system. "Life support status," Soren demanded, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Lieutenant Hammond looked up from her station, her face grim in the emergency lighting. 12 hours remaining, Captain. Maybe 14 if we power down non-essential systems." Soren nodded, processing this information with the calculated detachment that had earned him command of the Helios. 12 hours to save 23 lives. The nearest outpost was 3 days away at maximum speed, which they no longer had the capability to achieve. Communications. Technical Officer Rossi shook his head. "Still down, sir. The array was destroyed in the impact." The bridge fell silent. They all knew what this meant. The Helios had been on a classified research mission, their route known only to a select few at Earth Command. No one would come looking for them, at least not until it was far too late. "Keep trying," Soren ordered, refusing to accept defeat. "And continue scanning. There might be another vessel in the vicinity." The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Crew members who weren't essential to the ship's immediate operations were ordered to hibernation pods to conserve oxygen. Those who remained worked tirelessly, searching for any solution that might save them from the cold embrace of space. It was Technical Officer Rossi who first noticed the anomaly on the scanner. "Captain," he called, his voice tight with urgency, "I'm picking up something unusual." Soren moved to his station, studying the readout with furrowed brows. "Define unusual, officer." "It's a ship, sir. At least I think it is. But the configuration doesn't match anything in our database, and it's moving, strangely." The object on the scanner seemed to shimmer, its position fluctuating despite maintaining a steady approach vector toward the Helios. It defied the laws of physics as humans understood them. "First contact," Lieutenant Hammond whispered, voicing what they all were thinking. "Perhaps," Soren replied cautiously. "Or a sensor malfunction. Prepare defensive countermeasures just in case." But as the minutes passed, it became increasingly clear that what approached was indeed a vessel, and one unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It gleamed like liquid mercury against the backdrop of space, its shape fluid and ever-changing, as if it was composed of living metal. "It's hailing us," Rossi reported with surprise. "Audio only." Soren straightened his uniform, a gesture born of habit rather than vanity. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was melodic and hauntingly beautiful, speaking perfect English with an accent that seemed to dance between syllables. "Vessel in distress, I am Captain Navarro of the Luminari. I offer assistance." The crew exchanged glances of mingled hope and suspicion. First contact, in the middle of nowhere, just when they needed it most. The coincidence seemed too perfect to trust. "This is Captain Soren Nazari of the Earth research vessel Helios," Soren responded carefully. "We appreciate your offer, but I must ask, how did you find us? And how do you speak our language?" There was a moment of silence before the voice replied, a hint of amusement coloring the words. "I have been observing your species for some time, Captain Nazari. Your distress signal was detected by my sensors." "We haven't been able to send a distress signal," Hammond muttered under her breath. "Your ship itself is the signal," Navarra continued, as if hearing the lieutenant's comment. "Its failing systems are broadcasting an energy signature that my kind recognize as distress. May I dock with your vessel to provide assistance?" Soren considered their options, which were essentially non-existent. Even if this was a trap, they were already facing certain death. "Permission granted," he finally said. "Docking Bay 2 is still operational." The alien vessel approached with graceful precision, extending what appeared to be a docking tunnel that sealed against the Helios's hull with a soft thud. The crew waited with bated breath as the airlock cycled. When the inner doors finally slid open, Soren found himself facing a being that defied all expectations. Nevara stood slightly taller than an average human woman, her slender form draped in what appeared to be a garment made of flowing light. Her skin shimmered with a pearlescent quality, shifting subtly between shades of lavender and silver. But most striking were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and filled with a luminescence that suggested deep wisdom and ancient knowledge. "Captain Nazari," she said, her voice even more mesmerizing in person. "Your ship is beyond repair, but I can transport your crew to safety." "And what would you want in return?" Soren asked bluntly. His years in space had taught him that nothing came without a price. Nevara's luminous eyes studied him with interest. "Perceptive," she observed. "Yes, there is something I require, something only a human can provide." The crew tensed, hands drifting toward weapons. "And what would that be?" Soren challenged. "Shelter," Nevara replied simply. "On your world, in your home specifically, Captain Nazari." Soren frowned. "My home, why?" "My reasons are my own," she said. "But I give you my word that I mean no harm to you or your species. In return for your hospitality, I offer you something no human woman can provide." The statement hung in the air, loaded with implications that made several crew members shift uncomfortably. "Which is?" Soren pressed. Nevara smiled, an expression that transformed her already beautiful features into something truly otherworldly. "Protection, knowledge, and a connection that transcends the limitations of your physical form." She stepped closer, her movement fluid like water. "Your life support systems will fail in approximately 10 hours and 23 minutes. You have until then to decide." With that, she turned and walked back toward the airlock, pausing only briefly to add, "Choose wisely, Captain Nazari. Your decision affects not only your crew but potentially the future of our species' relationship." As the airlock sealed behind her, Soren exchanged glances with his officers. They faced an impossible choice: trust this alien being and her cryptic offer, or accept their fate adrift in the cold vacuum of space. "Opinions?" Soren asked his senior staff once they had gathered in the conference room. "It could be a trap," Security Chief Reeves stated flatly. "We know nothing about her species or their intentions." "True," Hammond agreed, "but we're already trapped. At least this way we have a chance." Soren nodded thoughtfully. "The question is, what does she really want? Why my home specifically?" No one had an answer to that. As the hours ticked by and their oxygen dwindled, the decision weighed heavily on Soren's shoulders. In the end, the responsibility of command left him with only one choice. When Nevara returned for his answer, Soren stood alone in the docking bay. "I accept your terms," he said. "Save my crew, and you'll have shelter in my home for as long as you need it." Nevara's luminous eyes seemed to look through him, past flesh and bone to something deeper. "A wise decision, Captain," she said softly. "Our journey together will be enlightening." As the alien vessel engulfed the Helios in a cocoon of shimmering energy, Soren couldn't shake the feeling that he had just altered the course of his life, and possibly humanity's future, in ways he couldn't begin to comprehend. The bargain's price. The journey back to Earth aboard Nevara's vessel was nothing short of miraculous. What should have taken months was accomplished in mere days, the alien craft moving through space in ways that defied human understanding. During the voyage, the Helios crew recovered in strange, translucent pods that healed their injuries and restored their strength. Commander Porter, Soren's second-in-command, approached him on the third day as they stood observing Nevara manipulate what appeared to be liquid controls on the bridge of her ship. "Captain, a word?" Porter asked, his voice low. Soren nodded, following him to a quiet corner away from their host. "Sir, what exactly did you agree to?" Porter's stern expression conveyed his concern. "The crew is grateful, but we're worried about the terms of this arrangement." Soren watched Nevara from across the chamber. Even after days in her presence, her otherworldly beauty remained disorienting. "I agreed to provide her shelter in my home, nothing more." "And what does she offer in return?" "Something no human woman can provide is rather vague, sir." "Protection and knowledge were mentioned." Soren replied, aware of how insufficient the explanation sounded. I made the only choice I could, Porter. We were out of options. Porter's expression softened slightly. I know, sir, and we're all alive because of it. Just be careful. The conversation ended as Navarra glided toward them, her movements fluid and graceful. We will reach your Earth tomorrow, she announced. Your government will have questions about my presence. I've been thinking about that, Soren admitted. First contact protocols would typically involve quarantine and extensive debriefing. Navarra's luminous eyes fixed on him. That would violate our agreement, Captain. I require direct access to your dwelling. If these protocols interfere, I cannot guarantee the continued function of your vessel's repair systems. The implication was clear. The miraculous healing that had saved the crew could be reversed. Soren felt a chill despite the comfortable temperature of the alien ship. I understand, he said carefully. I'll make arrangements. Upon reaching Earth orbit, Soren contacted Earth Command, explaining their rescue by a previously unknown alien species. He carefully omitted the details of his arrangement with Navarra, instead emphasizing the peaceful nature of the contact and requesting immediate landing clearance. Admiral Blackwood's face on the communication screen was a mask of controlled shock. This is unprecedented, Captain Nazari. Protocol dictates. With respect, Admiral, Soren interrupted, Navarra has requested direct transport to my residence as compensation for our rescue. I've given my word. Blackwood's expression hardened. That's not your decision to make, Captain. Our lives were, Soren countered firmly. Every member of my crew is alive because of her intervention. I believe honoring this request is in humanity's best interest. After tense negotiations, a compromise was reached. Navarra would be permitted to accompany Soren to his home, but under surveillance and with regular check-ins from government officials. When they finally landed at the new Pacific spaceport, the reception was controlled chaos. Medical personnel, security teams, and government representatives swarming around the alien vessel. Navarra emerged beside Soren, her shimmering form drawing gasps from the assembled humans. Remember our agreement, she whispered, her voice carrying despite the noise around them. Soren's coastal home sat perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, isolated and private, perfect for a starship captain who spent most of his life in the confined spaces of vessels. As they entered, Navarra moved through the rooms with a curious intensity, her fingertips brushing surfaces as if reading them. This will suffice, she declared finally, turning to face Soren. You have fulfilled the first part of our bargain. Soren watched her carefully. And what exactly is the second part? You mentioned providing something no human woman could. Navarra smiled, an expression that transformed her alien features into something heart-stoppingly beautiful. In time, Captain, first we must establish trust. The following weeks settled into an unusual routine. Government scientists visited regularly, conducting non-invasive studies of Navarra while she patiently answered their questions, at least those she chose to answer. She revealed little about her species, the Luminari, beyond their advanced understanding of energy manipulation and space travel. In private, however, Soren began to notice strange occurrences. Objects moved when neither of them was present. The temperature would fluctuate unexpectedly. Most disturbing were the dreams, vivid visions of stars and worlds he had never seen, yet felt intimately familiar with. One night, he woke to find Navarra standing at the foot of his bed, her form glowing softly in the darkness. "What are you doing?" he demanded, startled and uneasy. "Observing," she replied simply. "Your species fascinates me, especially during unconsciousness. Your mind becomes accessible." Soren sat up, suddenly alert. "Have you been entering my dreams?" Navarra tilted her head, an oddly human gesture. "Not entering, sharing, there is a difference." "Not from where I'm standing," Soren countered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I need to understand what's happening here, Navarra. What do you really want from me? Why my home specifically?" The alien woman moved to sit on the edge of his bed, her luminescence casting soft shadows across the room. My species exists in symbiosis with others. We require proximity to sentient beings to sustain ourselves. You feed on us? Soren asked sharply. Not in the way you imagine, Nevara corrected. We absorb emotional energy, consciousness itself sustains us. Without it, we wither and die. Soren processed this information, the implications slowly dawning on him. So I'm, what? A battery. For the first time, Nevara looked genuinely distressed. That terminology is crude and inaccurate. Our relationship is more complex. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above his chest. I chose you specifically, Soren Nazari. Your mind has a rare quality, a depth of emotion coupled with disciplined thought. It is nourishing to me. And what happens to me in this exchange? He asked, not backing away from her nearness despite his concerns. In most cases, the host experiences enhanced dreaming, occasional emotional intensification. She paused, her eyes searching his. But with compatible minds, the benefits can be far greater. Extended lifespan, heightened awareness, access to knowledge beyond human experience. Soren considered her words carefully. And how do you determine compatibility? Nevara's expression softened. It is already happening, Soren. The dreams you experience are not merely dreams, but glimpses through my consciousness, memories of worlds I have visited, civilizations I have witnessed. The revelation should have terrified him, but instead, Soren felt a strange sense of wonder. The dreams had been beautiful, expansive, offering perspectives he could never have imagined. Why didn't you simply explain this from the beginning? He asked. Would you have agreed? Nevara countered. Or would you have seen me as a threat to be contained and studied? Soren had no answer. The admission hung between them, uncomfortable but honest. I need to think about this, he finally said. Nevara rose gracefully. Of course, but know that the connection has already begun. It cannot be simply undone without consequences for us both. As she glided from the room, Soren remained sitting in his bed, contemplating the implications of her words. Outside his window, the ocean crashed against the cliffs, constant and unchanging, unlike his life, which had been irrevocably altered by the alien woman now dwelling under his roof. The following morning, Soren contacted Dr. Wilhelmina Patel, the lead xenobiologist assigned to study Nevara. They met at a secluded cafe overlooking the spaceport, away from both government surveillance and Nevara's presence. I need to know what you've learned about her, Soren said without preamble. Dr. Patel stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Remarkably little, considering the extensive testing we've conducted. Her biology defies our understanding. She appears to be composed of organic matter, but it's structured unlike anything we've ever seen. What about her claims? That her species requires emotional energy from other sentient beings. Patel's eyes sharpened with interest. She told you this? She's been quite reticent with us. She leaned forward. Captain, if that's true, it raises serious concerns about her presence on Earth. We could be looking at a potential invasive species scenario. Soren frowned. She's not harmful, at least not intentionally. You sound quite certain, Patel observed. May I ask why? The question gave Soren pause. Why was he defending Nevara? Was it gratitude for saving his crew, or something more, something influenced by the connection she claimed was forming between them? Just a gut feeling, he replied finally, unwilling to reveal the shared dreams or the growing sense that he understood Nevara in ways that defied rational explanation. As he returned home, Soren found Nevara waiting for him on the terrace overlooking the ocean. Without turning, she spoke as if continuing a conversation they'd been having all along. You sought information about me, she stated. That is understandable but unnecessary. I will answer your questions directly. Can you read my mind now? Soren asked, alarmed. Nevara turned to face him, the setting sun catching the iridescent qualities of her skin. Not your thoughts precisely, but your emotional state is loud, particularly to me. Soren moved to stand beside her at the railing. Then tell me everything, no more half-truths or omissions. And as the sun sank below the horizon, Nevara began to explain the true nature of their bargain. and the price that both of them would ultimately pay. Bonds beyond stars. Twilight deepened into night as Nevara's explanation unfolded. The ocean below Soren's cliffside home churned restlessly, mirroring the turbulence in his mind as he absorbed her revelations. My kind evolved not as individual entities, but as connective nodes in a vast sentient network, Nevara explained, her luminescence growing brighter as darkness fell. We once shared a collective consciousness spanning multiple star systems, each luminary connected to thousands of others. What happened? Soren asked, nodding the sorrow that flickered across her features. War, Nevara replied simply. Not our own, but between species we had bonded with. When they destroyed each other, the psychic backlash shattered our network. Those of us who survived became isolated, forced to seek individual connections to sustain ourselves. Soren leaned against the railing, studying her alien beauty against the backdrop of stars. Stars she had traveled between with an ease humans could only dream of. So you're essentially refugees, he concluded. Yes, she acknowledged, scattered across galaxies, each seeking a compatible host species. And humans are compatible? Soren asked. Nevara's luminous eyes focused on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. Not all humans, but you, Soren Nazari, are exceptionally so. Your neural patterns resonate with mine in ways I've rarely encountered. The implication hung between them, unspoken but clear. This wasn't random chance. She had chosen him specifically, perhaps even engineered the rescue of his crew to establish contact. The dreams I've been having, Soren said carefully. They're not just your memories, are they? They're the beginning of our connection. Yes, Nevara confirmed. The symbiosis has already begun. Your consciousness touches mine during sleep when your mental barriers are lowest. And what exactly happens when this symbiosis is complete? Soren pressed. Nevara moved closer, her form casting a gentle glow in the darkness. We become something greater than the sum of our parts. Your mind gains access to my knowledge and experiences spanning centuries. My essence is stabilized by your emotional capacity and unique perspective. It sounds invasive, Soren observed, not backing away despite her proximity. It is intimate, Nevara corrected. More intimate than any human relationship, but it is not parasitic, both gain equally. Soren fell silent, processing her words. The logical part of his mind screamed caution, but something deeper, something he couldn't fully identify, felt drawn to the possibility she offered. I need time, he finally said. Time is something I can provide, Nevara replied with a gentle smile. But the connection, once begun, progresses naturally. Fighting it causes discomfort for both parties. As if to emphasize her point, a sharp pain flared behind Soren's eyes, gone almost as quickly as it appeared, but enough to make him wince. That was just a taste, Nevara warned. Complete rejection would be considerably more traumatic. The implicit threat was clear, yet somehow Soren sensed it wasn't intended as manipulation, but as simple fact, a warning of natural consequences. I understand, he said quietly. Over the following weeks, Soren observed the changes in himself with scientific detachment. The dreams intensified, becoming more coherent, less fragmented visions and more like memories he could recall with perfect clarity. During waking hours, he occasionally experienced flashes of knowledge he couldn't possibly possess, understanding alien languages when government linguists brought recordings, recognizing star systems he'd never visited. Dr. Patel noticed the changes during her regular visits to monitor Nevara. You seem different, Captain, she remarked one afternoon as they observed Nevara interact with a quantum computer the research team had brought. More focused, perhaps. Your neural scans show unusual activity in regions typically dormant in humans. Soren maintained a neutral expression. The experience of first contact would change anyone, Doctor. Patel's sharp eyes studied him with professional concern. Captain Nazari, as your physician, I need to know, has she done something to you? Before Soren could formulate a response, Colonel Thaddeus Grant entered the room. As head of the newly formed Extraterrestrial Security Division, Grant had made no secret of his distrust toward Navarra. "Doctor, Captain," he greeted them curtly before fixing his attention on Navarra. "Our subject continues to withhold critical information about her technology and species." "She's not a subject, Colonel," Soren corrected, irritation flaring unexpectedly. "She's a guest." Grant's cold eyes shifted to Soren. "A guest who refuses security scans and won't disclose her true capabilities. Tell me, Captain, does that sound like the behavior of someone with nothing to hide?" Something protective stirred in Soren, an impulse that felt simultaneously foreign and deeply familiar. "She's cooperated with every reasonable request. Your definition of reasonable seems to include invasive procedures no diplomat would submit to." Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We're concerned about your objectivity, Captain. Your neural scans show anomalies consistent with potential cognitive influence." The accusation hung in the air between them. Soren felt a strange, dual awareness. His own indignation mingled with something else, a presence in his mind that felt distinctly like Navarra, observing the conversation through his senses. "Are you questioning my fitness for duty, Colonel?" Soren asked quietly. "Not yet," Grant replied, "but I've recommended enhanced monitoring of both you and your guest. The President will make a decision by week's end." After Grant departed, Soren found Navarra waiting for him in the living room, her expression troubled. "They fear what they don't understand," she said softly. "It is the same across all species I have encountered." Soren paced the room, conflicted. "Can you blame them? You've admitted your species forms symbiotic bonds that alter neural patterns. From their perspective, you could be controlling me." "And am I?" Navarra challenged. "Do you feel controlled, Soren?" The question gave him pause. The changes he'd experienced were undeniable, yet he'd never felt his will compromised. If anything, he felt more himself, more aware, more present than he'd ever been. "No," he admitted finally, "but that doesn't change how it appears to others." That night, the dream was different. Instead of passive observation of alien landscapes, Soren found himself standing with Navarra in what appeared to be a vast library, stretching endlessly in all directions. "What is this place?" he asked, aware he was dreaming yet fully conscious. "A mental construct," Navarra explained, her form more defined here than in the physical world. "A way for our minds to interact directly without the limitations of verbal communication." She gestured, and a section of the library illuminated. "These are my memories, centuries of knowledge gathered across dozens of worlds." Soren approached the glowing shelves, instinctively understanding that each book represented a different experience or piece of knowledge. He reached out, touching one. Instantly, he was flooded with information. The complete history and culture of a civilization that had perished millennia ago, preserved only in Navarra's memory. The experience was overwhelming yet exhilarating. "This is what you offer," he breathed, understanding dawning. "Not just a connection, but preservation. Your species are living archives." "Yes," Navarra acknowledged. "When civilizations fall, as they inevitably do, we carry their essence forward. It is our purpose, our gift." Soren faced her, seeing her now not just as an alien being, but as something far more profound. A repository of wisdom spanning ages, offering a bridge between humanity and the countless civilizations that had come before. "And what do you gain from humanity?" he asked. "From me." Navarra's expression softened. "Something equally precious, perspective, vitality, the unique emotional capacity that defines your species and—" She hesitated, seemingly uncertain for the first time since he'd known her. "And," Soren prompted. "Connection," she admitted. "The end of isolation. Since the shattering of our network, each luminary exists in profound solitude. Through bonding, we touch the collective once more, however faintly." The vulnerability in her admission touched something in Soren. The realization struck him that despite her advanced nature, Navarra was, in her way, as lonely as any human might be. Perhaps more so, having known a unity of consciousness humans could scarcely imagine. Their shared dreamscape began to fade as morning approached, but before it dissolved completely, Soren made a decision. "I accept," he said, "not just out of obligation for saving my crew, but because I choose this connection." Nevara's expression transformed with joy, her luminescence brightening until it seemed to fill the entire construct. "Then our true journey begins," she whispered. Soren woke with a start, the memory of the dream crystal clear. He felt different, more complete somehow, as if parts of himself he hadn't known were missing had suddenly been restored. He found Nevara on the terrace, watching the sunrise. Without words, he joined her, aware of her presence in his mind like a gentle current flowing alongside his own thoughts. "They're coming for you," he said suddenly, the knowledge appearing in his mind without warning. "Grant has convinced the president you're a security threat." Nevara nodded, unsurprised. "I sensed their decision. They will attempt to separate us and study me more thoroughly." The thought of her being taken, subjected to invasive examination, filled Soren with unexpected dread. "I won't allow it," he stated firmly. "Their technology cannot hold me," Nevara assured him. "But separation now would harm you. Our bond, while progressing rapidly, is not yet stable enough to maintain across distance." Soren considered their options, drawing on both his military training and the new perspectives flickering at the edges of his consciousness. "Then we need to make them understand," he concluded. "Not just what you are, but what you offer humanity." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they formulated a plan, one that would either bridge the gap between species or force them to flee Earth entirely. Either way, their fates were now inextricably linked, for better or worse. "They will be here by nightfall," Nevara said, her awareness extending far beyond human senses. Soren took her hand, the first time he had initiated physical contact between them. Her skin felt warm and vibrant beneath his touch, pulsing with energies he could now partially perceive. "Then we'll be ready," he promised, feeling the connection between them strengthen with each passing moment. Whatever came next, they would face it together, human and Luminari, bound across the stars by a partnership neither had fully anticipated but both now embraced.